Hello and welcome to the Guardian Football Weekly. Big conclusions from the opening weekend in the Premier League. Where to start? Perhaps the instant popping of the enthusiasm balloons. Manchester United comfortably beaten by definitely going to finish bottom Hull City. Michael Carrick's men didn't turn up, but they were at least there. At times at the G-Tech, it felt that Spurs really weren't. Actually quite difficult to do that little in a football match. Brentford, like Hull, was superb. And then Villa walloped to Brighton, 4 down in half an hour. Liverpool snatch a late point at Newcastle, while Manchester City leave it very late to beat Bournemouth. The only one of these so-called top 6 to win, apart from Arsenal, who secured the title on Friday night. There's Ipswich and Leeds leaving it late to start the season with victory, and Everton win as Andy Burnham makes a strong start to his campaign to beat Michael McIntyre and Noel Gallagher in the Celebrity Cutaway League. All that plus your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Barry Glendenning, welcome.
Hi, Max.
Hello, Lars Sivertsen.
Good morning, everyone.
And welcome, Sam Dalling.
Hello, Max.
Jim says, if anything, this series of Premier League has started with too many storylines, and Grant says it's been one game. Overreact to all of it. Well, we will do. Let's begin then at Hull. They beat Manchester United 2-0 in the early game on Saturday. Moby Duck says, how are Hull going to cope with Champions League football next season? Ross says, is it time for Manchester United to appoint an interim manager to save their season? It is funny, Barry. I mean, it gets funnier. We'll get to Spurs, but it is funny.
Yeah, I mean, Manchester United had a shocking start to the season. Doesn't look so bad now after most of the rest of the games were played, but they lost against the Hull side. Many people, myself included, predicted would finish rock bottom of the Premier League. That may still happen. It's too early to say. It won't. But I was really surprised by how good Hull were. Not as surprised by how bad Manchester United were, because we've seen regularly how bad they can be, not necessarily under Michael Carrick. But Hull were brilliant, and it was a great opening game for them. I would say a very comfortable home win under head coach Sergei Yakirovich, who seems like a real good guy and a real good coach. And it was an excellent effort by him to get Hull promoted when many thought they would be relegated from the Championship last season. So he's used to defying expectations. But Hull looked fitter than United. They were more aggressive than United. They were better on the ball than United and better off the ball than United. And ultimately they won courtesy of goals scored by centre-halves from a couple of set pieces that Manchester United defended appallingly. I didn't notice it at the time, but Hull's opener scored.
Please, yes, I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, Hull's opener scored by Semi Ajayi. We saw the peculiar sight of Harry Maguire marking one of his own players.
Yeah.
And marking him so well that he fouled him and prevented him from getting across to block Semi Ajayi's shot. So, you know, I don't want to start a Harry Maguire pile-on, but that was funny. And it sort of, I would say, summed up Manchester United's performance in a nutshell. They weren't good at all. They were ponderous, slow on the ball, offered very little up front, and they will seriously need to up their game.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, that was it Mbumo? I'm not sure who he's holding. It's absolutely tremendous when you watch it in slow-mo. Like he's really got hold of him. Yes, Lars.
I wonder what the conversation in the VAR room was for that, because I'm guessing they've had meetings in the summer about how, like, okay, it turned into a bit of a rugby thing last year. Let's be a little tighter on like holding in the box, and they're looking at. But he's holding his own player. Like, I mean, I'm not sure what the rules say about that. No, that was very bad. This is the weekend of overreaction, right? We overreact to everything. It's what we do. But the big concern for me here is it's the same old thing with United. So Michael Carrick comes in, tightens them up at the back, makes them a little bit more direct and counter-attacking than they were under Amorim, where they were just passing the ball sideways endlessly. But the big question is, can he turn them into a team that can have their own passing game, that can unlock tight defenses? That was the big sort of X factor. And I don't think we ever got like a very conclusive answer to that in the last third of last season. And then we go into this season, and Hull City, I agree with everything Barry said, but what they did essentially was just play a 5 at the back and compress the space and be happy to not have any possession, score 2 goals from set pieces, and just kind of tell United, all right, come on, go on, open us up. And United looked like they were not good at that, still not very good at that. And that worries me. I feel like United's been bad at that for many, many years.
Yeah, I think that's the surprising thing, Sam, isn't it? Is you were sort of waiting for a reaction, and there was just none. It was just like Hull just sort of, we're too late. We're like, okay, we'll just shut up shop. That's fine.
Yeah, and as Lars said, that back five, having not seen Hull in pre-season, I'd assume that's what they do. And then Dean Holden was on Match of the Day 2 last night, and there was talk, because Manchester United went and lost to Milan with Amorim. They said, there was a suggestion he copied Amorim from last week. He said, no, we've been thinking about it for a few weeks, but actually we didn't want to give it away. So in pre-season, we played a back four, and then the players knew, and we just switched to a back five. And you're thinking, I mean, that is brave, because those are the games where you're getting into shape, and then he took both centre halves off as well. I think both.
I thought that was great.
Yeah, that was, because you don't see that. Usually, you only see centre backs replaced if they're injured, if they're having a shocker, or maybe right at the end. And to switch them up and to bring the young Aussie on, Harrington, for his Premier League debut at McNair, it's almost like, well, we don't fear you at all. And they had nothing to fear. It felt like a team that were just waiting for a moment of magic. All they were relying on was for someone to do something special, for Fernandes to do something special, and Buemo, even Maguire. I mean, Maguire was basically up front for a large period of the end of that game, and that isn't going to get you in or sustain you in the top four or get you anywhere in the Champions League. And Carrick, it's a funny one because he's so measured afterwards, and then I know he said, I'm talking to you calmly, but I'm seething inside. But then he's kind of damned if he does and damned if he doesn't, because some supporters really want to see a reaction, particularly in this day of sort of clippable stuff. They want him to be angry about it, because it's not an acceptable performance. And is there mitigation? Not really. I do think everyone might have assumed, easy away day. Actually, I think the last thing you want to do is go away to a newly promoted side on the first day of the season. But the worry is for Manchester United fans that Carrick has stabilised it last year, but they've still got that performance in them, and they need to move away. Top sides don't have that performance in them. But it was still funny. I know the sort of rage against Manchester United has softened from sort of the 90s, 2000s.
Oh, but it's still there, right? It's still there.
I thought I'd grown up and I was better than that, and I had a little soft spot, and then those goals go in and you see the WhatsApp groups go, and everyone still thoroughly enjoys it.
I mean, he did get Jan-Arge Fjortoft got a rise out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was watching this interview while Barry and I were both at the urinals post TalkSport show, and we had a discussion about, I'm 47. I shouldn't be on my phone at a urinal. And whenever I go to a urinal, I'm watching Jan-Arge Fjortoft interviews, and that isn't the case. But I think Fjortoft said something like, did you think there wasn't enough passion there? And Carrick went, that's ridiculous. But and it's so basic, Barry, isn't it? They wanted it more, or you've got to know that a promoted side are going to be up for it. But why not also be up for it? Like just be like, I don't know. It felt. I mean, there are so many similarities, I think, with the Brentford Tottenham game as well. But that kind of lack of, well, I don't want to say lack of passion, because I don't want Michael Carrick to call me ridiculous, but it just felt like that.
I think there was an obvious lack of passion, so I'm not sure why Carrick took such grave umbrage to this question, which, to be fair, I only half heard, Max, because I was concentrating doing my own business.
Yeah, of course.
But Hull clearly did want it more. They were more up for the game. Their players are clearly fitter than Manchester United. Like, a lot of the predictions I made in our pre-season pods were made to look really foolish after weekend one. Yuri Tielemans, I thought, would be brilliant, and he probably will be brilliant for Manchester United, but he looked miles off it in this game. And then at one stage we had the treaty to the sight of Ollie McBurney, who I thought was terrific for Hull.
Oh, yeah.
He caused so many problems for United centre-halves. But he just sort of sauntered past Tielemans and some other player in United's midfield and made up about 20 yards in the process as he set up another Hull attack. Like, that shouldn't be happening, and Manchester United players shouldn't be allowing him to do that. He's a good player, McBurney. He's not renowned for his silky skills and dazzling footwork.
Well, you did wonder if, Barry, if Hull would break Derby's points record. And Tombo had this question, which is, are my hopes of someone beating Derby's record already over for another year? Or can Spurs keep the flame alive? They went to the G-Tech, the late kickoff on Saturday, and they lost 3-0 to Brentford. Barry says, just a solid 45 minutes on Spurs, winning the transfer window, please. 240 million spent so far this summer. I mean, by the time you listen to this, it might be another 150 on that. I suppose we shouldn't be surprised that Brentford are good, Lars. But wow, I mean, Tottenham were so abject in this game. It was, even as a Tottenham fan, I was thinking, well, fair enough, this is funny. I know this is funny because this is bad.
Yeah, I do think, first of all, that the phrase winning the transfer window should be banned forever, because at least something that you should never, like,
of course,
if anyone who says that phrase in August or even September should be automatically dropped into a gunk tank, you know, whatever they may be, because you just don't know. Like, there's no way of knowing in August, September who has won the transfer window, because you don't know how any of these signings are going to work out. And we have this supporter mentality of, like, spend lots of money equals good, not spend lots of money equals bad. Now, that rarely is how it works out. It's a complete sidetrack. Spurs were very bad in this game, and I think De Zerbi was hinting afterwards that, of course, they've not had the preseason they would have wanted in terms of preparation, people joining the squad late because of the World Cup. They've traveled all around the world, which is, of course, very much their own fault, and maybe it'll take some time for them to become a team, he was suggesting, and I think that's entirely fair. But if you're in that situation where things aren't clicking just yet, and you're not playing the kind of football you want for understandable reasons, I hate to be one of those people, but you kind of have to compensate by making a fight out of it. Like, you have to at least put in a physical commitment and, like, try to make it unpleasant, because you know what you're doing. You're coming up against Brentford, who play in a very, like, you know what Brentford are going to do to you. They're going to be very direct. They're going to be very physically strong. They're going to be very good on set pieces, and they were all of those things. And it seemed like Spurs were not ready for it. And after De Zerbi came in the spring, there was this sort of desperation in the group, which I like to see. They were like the hooked fish that could see the boat in the distance. It's like, oh my God, we're going to get relegated here. And we actually saw a few games where the Spurs players were really battling. But that level of that was gone here now. Like, they were like, all right, we didn't get relegated, we're fine, we can just kind of cruise and things will be fine again. But the thing is, they won't necessarily. It's a tough league. Like, you need to actually fight for every point here. I'm rarely one to wang on about the lack of passion, because often I think that's a complete sidetrack from what's going on. But I do think in this game I don't think they understood the gravity of the situation. You're playing the opening game of the season away to Brentford. It's hard. You're going to have to fight them to get something, especially if you're not playing very well yet.
All those things are true, right? Brentford were physically so superior, but they were just much better at football as well. Like, they knocked it wasn't like Tottenham had it and knocked it about well. They attacked with no pace, whereas Brentford, I think their first goal was like 15 passes or something. Like, they played much, much better football.
Yeah, they were pretty superior all over the pitch. De Zerbi called out 3 of his players after the game who, I mean, he didn't call them out as in blame them for not being fit, but he said, you know, they are not ready to be playing in a game like this yet.
Tonali, Van Hecker and Senesi.
That's it, yeah. Interesting.
Tonali didn't have a long World Cup,
no.
did he?
I mean, why is Tonali not ready?
I don't know what the problem
what did he
is
do?
there.
Did he go on holiday to the Maldives all summer? Did he, like, not exercise?
Senesi might have played about 1 minute as well, anyway.
Yeah, Andy Robertson wasn't there too long either, was he? It's interesting, Keith Andrews, well, maybe it isn't interesting, I think it's interesting. Keith Andrews has brought Damien Duff in as his number 2.
Okay.
Which suggests to me that perhaps Duffer is being groomed as Brentford's next manager when Keith Andrews goes, you know, to his big gig. Although
to fail
somewhere else, like many Brentford managers before him. But I'll be interested to see what sort of influence Duff has on, if any, on how Brentford play. All the focus on games like this is about how bad Tottenham were, and it is funny that they spent all this money. Expectations were quite high among Tottenham supporters, and then within, whatever it is, 45 minutes, you're 3-0 down, and they were lucky they only lost 3-0 because it could have been worse. But yeah, Brentford were outstanding, genuinely outstanding.
Yeah, you wonder, Sam, do does Savinho and Marmoush take a look at that and think? Because I was thinking Andy Robertson leaves the pitch going, now I know what it's like to play for Tottenham. I've played against them enough times, but this is it. I think Savinho's going, actually, can I shock you? Yeah, can I shock you, Enzo?
You're just checking the bottom of that receipt and saying, have I got 24 hours to change my mind and get out of the contract? I think I'm trying to, as funny as it is, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a Spurs fan and think, is there anything to hold on to? And you're probably looking at it, and we're at that point. I know what De Zerbi said about them not being ready, and you think, well, in fairness, there are 5 or 6 of that team are going to change from what you'd imagine would be his best starting 11. I mean, Porro comes back in, Van der Ven comes in as captain, probably Doggy at left back ahead of Robertson. Fernandes came off the bench. Then you've got Savinho and Marmoush. So it is likely to change a fair bit. I mean, the Mikey Moore starting, I think, sums up the sort of lack of planning that they had, because I'm pretty sure he was set to go out on loan to Cologne a couple of weeks ago, and then he suddenly played in a friendly and they've delayed it, and I think he will end up going out on loan to Germany, but they've just had to thrust him in to play as a right-hand sided forward, and that just shows that the lack of foresight and preparation, and Brentford are just the polar opposite, aren't they? Like, they're just steady. I was going to say the same thing as Barry about Damien Duff. Like, this succession planning, they someone goes and the successor is already there in place, and that probably extends to the manager now with Keith Andrews. And they had one new signing play, Sangare, who I thought was
what a performance. Well.
Like, there's examples this weekend of a brilliant midfield debut and the worst one you can have, and we'll come on to that later. But Sangare just fitted in. They know the profile of players they're looking for. He's slowly just sort of built himself up going through the league. He started in Mali, has played a lot of football. And actually, I think it's credit to Brentford for putting themselves in a position where agents are probably going, someone like Sangare, like, well, you could jump into a top 4 or 5 side and maybe it'll go well, but maybe you might end up on the bench and you might fall away. Or you can go to Brentford and play for a couple of years as a Premier League starter. And that's their position, and they know their place in the pecking order. And they know they're going to lose players. But actually, they haven't lost players this summer. I think they're going to have a really good season. They brought in Sangare as a first-team starter. Wilson and Anthony off the bench, a good Premier League experience. So I think it could be a really exciting season for Brentford.
Does it make it awkward between, Keith Andrews and Damien Duff? Damien Duff is trying to suggest, maybe I'd bench Sangare. It's a good idea, Keith. Go on, do that. so he messes up. Spurs have got Charlton on Wednesday in the League Cup. We've won 2 from 2. So, that could add some real pain at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, couldn't they? Let's do the other walloping of the weekend. Brighton 4, Villa 0. And Barry, look, the first 7 minutes of Villa's season were pretty good.
Yeah. And if Ollie Watkins hadn't refused to play, which seems to be the case, they may well have been 2-0 up, because Buendia was playing as a makeshift striker. He had 2 early chances, which he missed. So it could have been so different if Ollie hadn't spat the dummy while trying to agitate for a move to Al Ali. Yeah, I sort of made a comment about how bad Villa were doing on our WhatsApp group, and I think you weren't watching the game live.
I was at a picnic, yes. I checked it. I was like, holy shit, 4-0, half an hour. This is sensational.
But I mean, right, we have to say Villa had no Martinez, no Watkins. They've lost Luca Dean, they've lost Morgan Rogers, they've lost Yuri Tielemans, they've lost Konsa. Amadou Onana is out long-term injured. So the spine of that team that won the Europa League is more or less been ripped out. Manzambi wasn't fit enough to play, and neither were Brian Maggio and Tammy Abraham. They were both injured. So that's a lot of players that they were unavailable to them yesterday. But by the same token, Brighton have lost Jean-Paul Van Eyck, Danny Welbeck. Baliba wasn't involved yesterday. Mint is probably going to be on the way out, and Cairo Matoma didn't play. So they also had issues to deal with, and you would have to say they dealt with them a lot better than Villa did. And Brighton's first goal came about as a result of a Villa throw-in near the halfway line, where and then it was chucked back to Pau Torres, who made a terrible mistake. And then Villa just totally capitulated, collapsed. And I think if Brighton hadn't decided to go easy on them in the second half when they were down to 10 men after João Gomez had perhaps the worst Premier League debut ever. I don't know. Yeah, it could have been a lot worse. It could have been a lot worse. But
It could have been,
at
yeah.
least, the one thing Villa fans can say is at least, they had a terrible start to last season as well, and that worked out okay for them.
You worry for Villa, though. I looked at that lineup and it just screamed Thursday night in November away from home in a game that we've already qualified from the group. Like, it wasn't a Premier League starting 11. And I'm not saying there's any... I've got no knowledge, or I don't think there's been anything about this, but the real worry for Aston Villa fans is if it gets to a point where Unai Emery says, actually, this isn't what I was promised anymore. I've got you into the Champions League. I've lost all those players that, as Barry has listed them, and he walks away. That would be my big fear as an Aston Villa fan, because I think with him there, they will be okay. Without him there, who knows? And they've also lost a set-piece coach as well. He's gone.
Nice 2 minutes for Jack Hinchelwood, scoring 2 in 2. And the first ref voice we hear is not a Yorkshireman. What a blow. As full scouse, Peter Banks sending off João Gomez. And then, it's worth mentioning Vuskovic, who was on the other side of the Van Hecke deal, who had an absolute stinker for Tottenham. Vuskovic looked absolutely brilliant. And I think in the previews, we were like, I think if Brighton and Tottenham are swapping a player for the same amount of money, you think who's going to come out better. It is, of course, only one weekend, Lars, isn't it?
Yeah, but I do think Philippe was a little harsh on him the other week in suggesting that this was that this transfer fee was, shall we say, suspicious for the benefit of the lawyers. This is a guy who at 19 is already a full Croatian international and was in the team of the year in the Bundesliga last season. Like, paying 45 million for that in today's market from another Premier League club is actually not completely crazy when you look at what people are spending money on. If Elliot Anderson is worth 100 million plus, then this is what we're looking at, I guess, now with transfer fees in this division.
Yeah. All right, that'll do for part 1. Part 2 will begin at St James's Park. Welcome to part 2 of the Guardian Football Weekly. Live shows are soon, and you must come. Dublin next week on the 1st of September at Vicar Street, and then London the 9th of September at the Soho Theatre in Walthamstow. You can live stream the London show as well, so anybody on earth can watch it. So we're trying to hit 7 billion. Go to guardian.co.uk/Football Weekly Live for tickets. It will be lovely to see you. We'll announce the lineups tomorrow. That'll be exciting on tomorrow's pod. Let's go to St James's Park, then Newcastle 2, Liverpool 2. You were there, Sam. Really good game, and I guess it must really sting, just obviously conceding that late. But do you think it was probably a fair result?
I think it's one of those results that both managers afterwards would have made claims that their team were the better side. Fair. I'm too subjective.
I can't
say fair. I mean, it's everyone's saying, it's after the 95 minutes and whatnot, and people all these examples of previous stuff. It's happened, soft penalty, etc. Maybe it was fair.
Right? Have you just been watching reels of people running into people's legs, going, "That wasn't a penalty. That wasn't a penalty. That wasn't a penalty."
Yeah,
I think
Big Six cartel. Yeah, it probably was.
Yeah.
The argument is, what can he do? He's got to stand there. And then I've seen examples of the one from Anthony Gordon against Chelsea last year. But blow all that out. It was a penalty. It's just such a disappointment. It just deflated in that second when that whistle goes. It's amazing how 50,000 people can go from buoyant to just flat with the blow of a whistle.
So it's interesting, Sam, is that I was talking on the previews about Liverpool's signings from last year possibly coming good, and it changes the whole idea. And actually, it was Newcastle, so it was Wissa and Elanga, especially Wissa, who had by a stretch his best game in a Newcastle shirt, I think.
This was a guy who was static, couldn't move. It was remarkable. Even Elanga, 5 minutes in, there was this sliding doors moment. Opening day of last season, he has a very easy chance against Aston Villa. He misses it on his Newcastle debut, and he doesn't score a goal. And he was a figure of fun, right, Elanga? Him and Vissa were basically like. Have you ever watched Slow Horses TV show? Sort of the premise. So Jackson Lamb, for people that don't know, he looks after these sort of MI5 misfits who are still just about in MI5. But they're farmed out and they're basically unusable as real agents. And Visser and Elanga are basically like the slow horses of football. They were sort of professional footballers they had contracts, but
Eddie Howe just farting about constantly, burping and farting.
Newcastle would be chasing a goal. There'd be one down and Visser would come on in like 90+2. They just couldn't use him. But Visser played in this number 10 role. It's amazing what someone new, fresh energy can bring. And that's not saying anything about what happened previously. But Visser, for the second goal, what he does when he's got 4 Liverpool guys around him, he gets the ball inside the Newcastle half. And it's not particularly like fancy bit of skill. But it's just something you would have expected him to lose that ball last year. And he was full of running. He should have scored at least once. And if he's sharp and if he's in a bit of a run, Newcastle will go 3-1 up. But I think with that young side, and it was young, I mean, they've replaced Tonali and Bruno, an 18-year-old make his Premier League debut, and Lewis Miley, a 20-year-old, played as that midfield double pivot. And Newcastle will make mistakes, and there will be stuff that's imperfect, and people will have to live with that. But from what we saw yesterday, it's going to be really fun, because, I mean, Alanga looked at different players, say Whistle looked a different player, so it's almost what we can expect. There'll be moments of disappointment of being flat, but it'll also be an exciting ride.
From a Liverpool perspective, Barry, I thought before Gakpo scored, they really sort of had grown into that game. Or not? Maybe not.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised. That's not something that occurred to me, I must say. I think if I was a Newcastle fan, I know many of them approach the season with trepidation bordering on dread. Apart from the obvious disappointment of going down to a late penalty, I'd be very encouraged and optimistic on the back of that result. I thought they were good. I wasn't hugely impressed with Liverpool. I think Newcastle probably deserved the win, but they do seem to find ways of messing up from winning positions against Liverpool at home, don't they, in the league? New and interesting ways. And I did think it was a penalty, but I think if it hadn't been given, I'm not sure VAR would have intervened. But anyway, it was given, so that doesn't matter. Liverpool were okay, but I don't think they were any better than okay.
Lars?
Disagree slightly. I think they created many more chances and had many more shots in the game. I think what struck me with this is just how far up the pitch they play now on the Iraola, and both of the goals come about from counterattacks when they're just not covering spaces very well. The first one was particularly egregious, right? Because you lose possession on the edge of the box, and both your central midfielders are in Newcastle's box. Like both Szoboszlai and Gravenberch have made runs ahead of the ball, and if you lose the ball, then you're screwed, right? There's nothing there. There's no and Elanga is so good when he has space to run into. Like, that was why he was so perfect for Nuno's counter-attacking Nottingham Forest. Then he goes to Newcastle last season and ends up in so many situations when he has to square up against a fullback and go past him, and he's just not great at that. But when he has space to burst into, he is absolutely brilliant at that. And he had situations where he could do this. I think the amount of chances Liverpool created was pretty promising, but I think the high wire act of being that high up the field is something you're going to have to work on. Iraola, I think, rejected the idea that they were too cavalier. He said the point about that first goal is that they should have finished the chance, because of course they did have some shooting chances there maybe. But I would like to see, if they're gonna be that high up the field, I think you need to tell your central midfielders to show some degree of responsibility, because they can't both be ahead of the ball at the same time.
Yeah.
And it was a very Florian Wirtz performance in which he did a lot of small things well, but then Isak continues to be a little bit of a non-entity up front for Liverpool, and that is a problem.
Yeah, he did whack one almost into the away fans, which is sort of quite hard to do at Newcastle. I thought Xhaka looked quite good. Liverpool have had an improved bid for Yakuba Minta rejected. They bid 60, Brighton wants 70. I was about to say, God, these transfer fees are ridiculous, but there's no point in saying that. A word on the Kevin Keegan tribute, Sam, because they looked great.
Yeah, it was beautiful, and credit to I think it's War Flags group who put it all together, because basically it was entirely around the ground, and it included the Liverpool fans as well. So it was black and white, with the number 7 in red, but then the Liverpool fans above them had the name Keegan. I mean, for someone just to sort of unify football supporters like that is very rare. It was Yeah, it was a lovely moment. A lot of the entertainers were back. So Les Ferdinand was actually, I think he was working, so he was in the press box, and there was a lovely moment actually when Newcastle got the first goal. Someone managed to run in and just completely innocently and was just celebrating and hugging Les Ferdinand, and he had a big smile on his face. And you're like, how's this bloke got into the press box? And you look across, and it's because the steward who's meant to be on post is hugging a supporter. It was just a moment of joy, and Asprilla was back in town, and there were photos of Asprilla and Nobby Solano out partying, which would be some party the night before. But it was lovely, and there was a message in the Gallagate, a quote from Keegan about dreaming, and people basically who often dampen dreams but haven't got a reason. And I think it's a bit cliched and whatnot, but it was football. Yeah, it was a reminder that football can and should be fun, and about taking risks and about being vulnerable and it being okay to make mistakes. The game went so far towards being absolutely perfect and it just being rigid, and actually, particularly in Newcastle's case, because of where they are, they just got to have a little bit of fun and bring the enjoyment back. And they certainly did that yesterday. From a Newcastle perspective, they just need to make sure they can try and do that when there isn't such there was a lot of emotion behind it, right? And that can get you up for a game. So they have to do that in games where there isn't that level of emotion. But Keegan's family were there, and it was beautifully done.
On Friday night, Arsenal beat Coventry 3-0, and there, Barry, is the title.
Yeah, I mean, it couldn't have been a nicer introduction to the season for Arsenal. A comfortable 3-0 win, no injuries, no controversy. Everyone played pretty well. Declan Rice and Bukayo Saka started for them. Christos Tollis looked good on the left wing, new signing. Miles Lewis-Skelly, whose future, I don't know if it's still in doubt, but it was up till quite recently. He was very good, I thought, at the base of the midfield. For Coventry, it was a chastening return to earth with a bang after the joy of their promotion. I think they only had 4 shots in the match. 7 players from last season in their starting lineup, and they were made to suffer by an Arsenal team playing with a fair bit of swagger and strut, I would say. But, it's as difficult an assignment as Coventry could have had for their first match back. They didn't totally disgrace themselves, but they were poor. We'll get a better idea of what they're made of when they play Hull next weekend, I guess.
Well, I was going to say, fifth place Hull is it's tricky, isn't it? The games are tough for Coventry. Look, I mean, Lars, for Arsenal, so much talk about would they play with a bit more style, and with the caveat that it's Coventry, and Coventry were quite helpful with the first 2 goals. They did look more entertaining. It was a fun, and I can't work out if actually Arsenal probably were quite entertaining at some points last season, and I've completely forgotten. And every game was just a grind. Okay, then this was nice.
Of Champions League group games, they were
right. Okay,
decent.
But this was nice, right? This was good football. It was entertaining. It was fun, and I think you've made the point before. If Odegaard is fit, they're going to be naturally just more entertaining to watch.
Yeah, it's fair. Listen, I'm being a little harsh. I think they were extremely grindy in the last third of the season because I think they realized, okay, the sort of passing game is not flowing, but our defense is brilliant and we can score goals from set pieces. So Arteta just kind of doubled down on that to secure the league and Champions League finals. You can't really complain about it because it worked, but they weren't great to watch for a lot of that. It's such a weird chicken and egg thing, which is did they play stodgier football last season? Because that's something they decided to do, and because of that, Odegaard and Saka didn't look as much fun as they usually do, or were they just not able to play as good football as they want because Odegaard was injured, because Saka had injuries, that neither of them had their best seasons? I honestly don't know the answer to that. I do know that Martin Odegaard looked a lot more like his old self for Norway during the World Cup, and he looked a lot more like his old self in this game. So maybe this is him kind of overcoming his physical issues a bit. And if he's back to his best, Arsenal will typically look very differently because he can connect things in that attack in the way no one else in that squad really can. So I thought this was great. I was thinking a lot about this. It's only Coventry, because when I was watching United lose to Hull, I had a plan of coming on here and saying, but playing these newly promoted team on the opening day of the season, it can be very difficult. They come up with full of enthusiasm and belief. And then I looked back the last sort of 5-6 seasons, and I could really not find any examples of these big upsets. So maybe it is actually an easy thing to do. Watford beat Aston Villa back in 2021 or something. Aside from that, it just wasn't. So maybe it is actually quite an easy thing to do. We spent so much of the weekend saying, yes, Arsenal were great, but it's only Coventry. I guess that does raise the question of, United were bad, and it was only Hull. I mean, it seems very unfortunate.
Yeah, it's possible, isn't it? We talked about Solis a bit after the Community Shield, Sam, and he does look like, and I really like Trossard, right? I was surprised that they sold Trossard. I thought, he was like a really underrated, very clever player, but Solis sort of looks like he's got all of that and then a bit more.
Yeah, and right club, right time. I was asking a Norwich supporting friend about him, and he just rolled his eyes. Just like, it's remarkable how he's like, well, he never did anything for us, and that just, he's gone away, turned himself into well, he already was, but he's got that first team experience. Yeah, he was just lively down the left. I like you. I mean, I think it was the start of last season, wasn't it? Trossard was on this run where you're thinking, well, actually, he's prolific and he's a starter for Arsenal, and then he goes. And you think, okay, so what are they going to do here? And he was just dangerous from the left from the start. And they said he'd shone in pre-season. He shone in the Community Shield, and he'll prove. What did he cost them? Because I know you were talking about transfer fees, but in relative Premier League terms these days, it could prove to buy a starter who's going to improve the champions for 35 million quid is quite some doing. Credit to Arsenal's recruiters. Quite where it leaves Martinelli, I'm not sure. Ian Wright seemed to be a little bit unhappy with the way he's been treated, or he was talking about it afterwards, and it leaves that. It's that weird. There's that question, isn't it? Is that just elite professional sport? I mean, how does it work? I don't know. You still got to deal with human beings, and we don't know. Like, if he's been told he's been left out of the squad, then I don't know. The manager has every right to do it, so we'll never know the ins and outs of it. But I think it just shows how ruthless elite professional sport can be.
Man City 2, Bournemouth 1, 2 late goals for City. I mean, that Barry for Maresca is absolutely enormous, that turnaround.
Yeah, they probably deserve to win. I mean, Mark Gay missed a very good chance to score from a header, then was given another free header at a corner and put that one away. And then they won courtesy of a goal that was initially ruled out for offside but overturned by VAR. It was an oddish City lineup. You presume they kind of have midfielders, just a big box of midfielders somewhere in the back of the training ground, or a skip full of them, behind the dressing room. But in this game, you had Mark Gay playing in midfield, Phil Foden lined up on the right, which is quite unusual, and Nick O'Reilly playing as a number 10. It worked, they got away with it, but Bournemouth gave them a really good game, and I think people were probably expecting City to win this far more easily than they ended up doing.
Gay in centre mid is interesting, Lars, isn't it? I think Ledley King sort of did that and did it really well for England sometimes and for Tottenham. So, it is possible to, if you are a ball-playing centre-back, to be a 6 and you're sort of defensively minded, so you sort of naturally hold your position better. I don't know if that is Maresca's long-term plan. I mean, Bawardi's coming in for, 100-odd million?
Yeah, they're bringing Bawardi at 85 million pounds or something, 100 million euros. He is 18, so you want to be a little patient with him. But I would expect this, and I would expect one more signing in midfield, to be honest, because you can't have, is it Anderson, Kovacic, and Buadi as your 3 guys for the season? That seems a little thin. I mean, they've been pushing for Enzo Maresca. No, well, they already have Enzo Maresca.
Yeah.
They've been pushing for Enzo Fernandez.
They pushed well for him, but yes.
Yes, the push was successful. Enzo Fernandez, which would make a ton of sense. I thought this game, for me, I watched this quite carefully, and of course they had some chances in the first hour as well. Erling missed a couple of chances. He just didn't get the rhythm quite right in this game, I thought, and they had some chances from crosses, but they were very turgid in their passing game, I thought. Really until Ryan Shirky came on. I mean, Ryan Shirky made such a huge difference when he comes in, and maybe they're being careful with him because he was at the World Cup. Maybe he is someone who is, because he's such a wild card, he's a little bit difficult to integrate into the sort of passing system that Maresca wants to have. But he makes such a big difference to them, like in his vision and his ability to see things. I hope going forward that Maresca will trust him, because it became a completely different game after he came on, and he almost won. He more or less won it for them, I thought.
Were you one of the Marco Rosa's a fraud school or not?
I wouldn't say fraud.
Okay.
So he is one of these sort of high-pressing guys from the Red Bull. He has a Red Bull past, I believe. And his teams have had a tendency to kind of burn out. Like, he gets them to press very high and run a lot, and then everyone gets tired and things kind of go wrong. That seems to be the Marco Rosa trajectory. There's also a couple of examples of players, like the one season Erling played under him at Dortmund. Suddenly he started getting muscle injuries. That was was a concern at the time. And Kunku, I think, got some bad muscle injuries under Rosa as well. So I think there are some, because he really does push them like normally. But then again, here's the thing about coaches. Just because you've done things one way at one club does not mean that's the only way you know how to set teams up. But I'm assuming you bring him in to follow Iraola because he has this sort of front foot, let's press, let's cause chaos approach. And I wonder about the longevity of it, because you burn out the players to an extent. And I think that's happened with him. But he has also had moments when his teams have played well.
Yeah, and they could have, like Cliver has a really good chance, I think, to make it 2, doesn't he? Which, could change the game. And City away is still hard, isn't it? My only thought about Erling Haaland having his hair cut, because obviously far too much airtime has been wasted on this, is I don't think it's a good time to lose your long hair when hair pulling is sort of so on vogue. And like that's not in his armory anymore.
It's true, but they have changed the rules now. It's been made very specific. Like there has to now be significant yanking or whatever they're calling it for it to be a red card. Like if it's an accidental like thing, it's no longer going to be a straight red.
See.
So maybe that's what Erling saw. He saw the gig is up. We're not gonna. It's not going to be as easy this year.
Significant yanking does sound like not something you should Google also as well. Anyway, that'll do for part 2. Part 3 will begin at Portman Road. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. I thought that deserved better, that googly bit at the end of part 2, but you win some, you lose some.
I Googled it immediately and the results were underwhelming.
Ipswich 2, Sunderland 1. A humiliating defeat on the opening day, Barry. Are you okay?
I'm fine. It was a bad defeat, but probably a deserved defeat. Sunderland gifted Ipswich 2 really cheap goals with sloppy passes from the back, or sloppy passes in their own third. The first from Luca 9, the second from Omar Alderete in injury time. He had replaced Luca 9, who didn't have a good time of it. A low performance from Luca, I would say, on this occasion. And obviously, Jack Clarke came on in this game for Ipswich, and I just thinking, I have a bad feeling about this. And he won the game for them with a typical Jack Clarke goal. But I think this was very much the Julio Enciso show. He was brilliant for Ipswich. Now, him being Paraguayan, I would have expected him just to walk around the pitch kicking people and arguing with the referee on the evidence of what we saw in the summer. But he focused on playing football, and he was the standout player on the pitch. He was brilliant. You're not going to get that performance from him every week, but Ipswich certainly got it on Saturday, and that is why they won. And tip of the hat to Nilson Angulo, who scored a brilliant free kick for Sunderland. But I have no complaints about this one. I think Sunderland deserves to lose.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Sam, you look poised.
Ipswich, it could have been a really, losing the manager, McKenna, after 5 years, it could have been and still could be a really difficult season, right? But they've almost gone the opposite of Coventry. I think they only had 4 regular championship starters playing. I think there's teams are now looking, it's been said before, at what Leeds and Sunderland do. And there's all this talk about the physicality of the Premier League and the step up, and you'd think there wouldn't be that much of a difference, in terms of physical professional athletes between the Championship and the Premier League, but there clearly is. But I went to Wigan and did some pre-season training with them for an article, and they're in League One. I was surprised how some of them were actually they just didn't. I don't know. I'd expect if you look at the Premier League sides, a lot of them you're just like walking around with giants, and it just wasn't like that. So maybe there is something in it. And they brought in this forward Emerson. I mean, they've spent a fair bit of money by their standards. Who, let's be honest, and without disrespecting him, no one had. I certainly hadn't heard of him. But I was looking him up, and he sort of won the second highest number of aerial battles in Ligue 1 when he was with Toulouse. He'd been in Turkey before that and hadn't really done anything, so they picked him out. Him and Cisco combined well for that first goal, and O'Neill knows Cisco. He managed him when he was at Strasbourg, and he was a real creator there. So they've gone down the route of almost wholesale changes to the squad, and they've started pretty well.
I do think the big physical difference between the Championship and the Premiership is, there's been a tendency for people to sign a lot of tall boys recently, but I think the speed is the thing that's completely different. So I spoke to a defender once for a promoted team who told me he wasn't the fastest defender in the world. He told me, like, the difference is in the Championship, I can see where my striker is going and I can follow him, whereas in the Premier League, like, they are all much faster than me, so I have to guess where they're going and just kind of go after them. Like, there is and I thought Norwich, like, complete digression, and I know we're running probably long today, but, like, I think the first goal Coventry conceded against Arsenal was such a welcome to the Premier League moment, because they make one small mistake and just bang, it's just a couple of passes, and you concede a goal immediately. Like, it's so fast when you make. I also spoke to another midfielder who arrived in the Premier League who said that he looked around so much his neck hurted after a couple of months of the first season, because usually you're used to having like a second when you get the ball, but now you have to always know where is the space you can take the first touch into so you can orient yourself, because you just have so much less time that you're used to. So I think that is the big change. Now maybe for trying to bring it back to Ipswich, bringing in guys like Enciso, who is very technically clever, bringing Lukic, who's played for Fulham before. I think having a few guys in there who know this stuff is very, very advantageous.
Yeah. Also worth saying, I watched Cambridge v Wigan. I saw Wigan play on the opening day. They were 3-0 down after about 60 minutes. They did look pretty unfit, if you ask me. So, their pre-season compared to a Premier League one is probably a sign, isn't it? To Everton then, they beat Palace 2-0. Baz, that Palace should have been ahead, shouldn't they? And Nketiah drew a brilliant save from Pickford. Mateta hit the post. And then Everton, it probably quite comfortable for Everton after that.
It was, yeah. But it was quite comfortable for them in the end, but they could conceivably have been 3-0 down before they scored. Kieran Dewsbury Hall's goal was brilliant. I thought Iliman Ndiaye played really well. He set up their second, the cross that Thierno Barry headed home. Good to see him off the mark early doors in the season, because he had a rough time of it last season until he didn't, I suppose. And Ndiaye could have had another one as well. He was denied by a good Dean Henderson save. So I think this is one of those Seb Hutchinson 3:00 on a Saturday wins that, it's nice 3 points in the bank, good way to start the season. I wouldn't be too down if I was a Palace. I wouldn't be too down on the strength of the performance if I was a Palace fan. I would be slightly down on what appears to be going on off the field, where with suggestions Jean-Philippe Mateta and Ismaila Sarr both want out, and obviously Wharton is presumably the subject of a lot of offers, even though they insist he's not for sale. He was brilliant in certainly the first half of this game.
Yeah. The Mateta thing is odd, isn't it, Lars? I don't know if you completely across it.
It's weird that he's starting, I think. Like, I mean, we had this drama with Watkins not being available, presumably because he wants to move. We don't actually know that for sure. We've been told to call him. I don't think he'll pick up the phone if I try. But with Mateta, we know what's going on. He's trying to have his contract annulled. Like, there was an optional extension in his contract that Palace triggered, and he's gone to FIFA to try to have it thrown out and not been successful. Is it weird that you're starting first day of the season with a guy who is desperate to not be there anymore, leading the line? Maybe he is a top pro and it doesn't affect his performance at all. But or maybe this is just a massive diss at Jørgen Strand Larsen, who is the Norwegian second choice striker, that they would rather have a dude who's trying to leave the club through any means up front than our boy Stan Larsen. I don't know.
Yeah, an annulment is very Henry VIII, isn't it? It just feels sort of, it's quite an annuller contract. Feels like a sort of odd
He
thing
needs
to
to
try
set
to
up
do.
his own religion. Is that what he needs? The Church of
Exactly.
Mateta.
Yeah, Mateta needs to break away.
The Church of Mateta. Where one of the key tenets is that you can leave Crystal Palace whenever you want.
Of course. And you're pretty good at holding the ball up as well. Take note. Hopefully Richarlison will join the religion and learn how to hold it up for the first time in his career. Hayden Hackney and Harrison Armstrong, I see sort of a young English midfield there. They look very good, didn't they? And there was Andy Burnham. I imagine we'll see him about 5 million times. As you pointed out on the radio yesterday, will he also be embraced by Peter Reid every time? That's what I want to see. Reedy becoming Minister of Sport. We'd take it. Forest 0 Leeds 1. Sam, strong thoughts on this or no strong thoughts on this?
Strong thoughts is probably a stretch, but I like Leeds this year. I think they could be a team that will really benefit from not being in Europe. They might be, I think, set up to be in that cycle of, all you do is, if you're a team that isn't in and around the top 4 or 5, you push to do the best you can to get into Europe, and then you have a load of Europa League or Conference League games, and then you struggle because you're playing Thursday, Sunday, and the teams that haven't got that are there to take advantage. And I think Leeds, with having signed James Trafford, who didn't have that much to do, I think he made one very good save. I think he's a top quality goalkeeper. Harry Wilson, it's a good free kick. Should Sells do a little bit better? Like 2-person wall from that angle at his near post. I don't know. It was a poor free kick to give away. I thought the challenge on the edge of the box, like you just run into him. It's not really a challenge at all. It's just one of those as a manager. You think, what are you doing? But they nicked an away win, and I do believe it's the start of what will be quite a good season to be a Leeds United fan.
James Trafford didn't have a whole lot to do in the game, but on his post-match interview and Match of the Day, he looked like a ham actor straight out of Central Casting delivering a Shakespearean soliloquy. I don't know if anyone saw it. I thought it was terrific.
Did he have a ruff? What was he wearing? What made him look so Shakespearean?
No, he was just lot of grand hand gestures and saying, people worry too much about winning and losing. Just have a go, young man.
Is that what he sounds like?
I really enjoyed that. Yeah, I don't think I'd ever heard him speak before, so I want more James Trafford interviews. But okay. I think this was probably the least entertaining of all the games played over the weekend.
Okay, well, look, nice to know James Trafford is John Gielgud. Let's get him on the stage. Fulham Chelsea is tonight. We'll talk about that on tomorrow's pod. Nice to see Anthony Gordon getting 2 assists for Barcelona last night. Some great EFL stuff. An amazing goal from Don Ballard for Bristol City. We'll talk about that tomorrow as well. We'll finish with this email from Kieran, which came via me a long time ago. But dear Max, Barry and friends, I'm writing this as a brother and best man to former Poly teammate of Max's, an all-round nice guy, Pat Kelly, who's getting married to the wonderful Morgan next August. After opting for a smaller wedding, they decided to make up for it with 2 big celebrations, one in Teesside, where she's from, and one in Peterborough, where we grew up. It was only when I recently had a look at Pat's side of the guest list for the Peterborough party I noticed something rather alarming. Namely, there didn't seem to be many names on it. A sobering realization soon followed. Perhaps my brother simply doesn't have that many friends. As a brother and best man, I naturally felt compelled to do something about this, so I thought, who better to invite than the very same group of people he spent so many hours listening to over the years. Now, Max, as a proud Cambridge United fan, currently living in Australia, I appreciate flying 10,000 miles just to spend a Saturday evening in Peterborough. Maybe a little ambitious. But seeing as you once generously covered Pat's playing fees when he was a skint student at university, perhaps it's only right that he finally returns the favour by paying for your flights. And Barry, should that not be enough to tempt you, as most of our family will be making the journey from County Mayo, I can personally guarantee both the Guinness and Tato's will be in plentiful supply. Should any of you actually fancy attending, I'd be delighted to provide the full details. That said, with the pair of you already preparing to spend the World Cup together in America, I appreciate there may be limits of how much time 2 grown men can reasonably spend in each other's company. If Peterborough pushes things beyond that limit, then a shout out on the pod and one of Baz's famous marriage predictions would be every bit as appreciated. Thanks in advance. Keep up the excellent podding. Get best wishes. Kieran. So yes, Kieran and Morgan, Barry, please. No. Pat and Morgan. It'd be terrible if Morgan ran off with Pat's brother at this stage of proceedings. pretty early on. But Pat is a very nice guy because he played football for me.
So sorry, he sent this before the World Cup, so I'm guessing...
He sent this ages ago, but the wedding party, I meant to time it for last week because the wedding was on Saturday, but now we can't go to Peterborough because it's late, but I forgot to read this out. So they are now married. They are wed. It's already happened.
Has the party taken place? Yes.
The party in Peterborough has taken place.
All right, because I'm just worried. I don't know if the Mayo contingent will have, if it was before or after they won the All-Ireland, but because if it was after the All-Ireland, I would imagine the Mayo contingent all turned up wearing red and green jerseys, drunk as lords before the proceedings had even kicked off after their historic win. I would obviously like to wish Pat and Morgan all the best. You have a better idea of what Pat will be like as a husband than I do.
Probably the best husband of all time. He's
after
nice.
Yourself, presumably.
Ahead of myself, I would say. Nice. But yeah, well done, Pat. Thanks for listening. And come to the Old Boys game next year, please. But that'll do for today. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Lars.
Thank you, Max.
Thank you, Sam.
You're welcome. Thanks, Max.
Cheers, Barry.
Thank you.
Football Weekly is produced by Matt Bentley-Viney. Our executive producer is Joel Grove. We'll be back tomorrow.